Okay, so this is Amber Horton, and today we're going to be talking about the usability project and the SWOT analysis of it. So here's my website. Um, I guess we're going to start by just going through the strengths first. So we have one of the strengths being the simplicity of the design. I found that all of my users could find all of the information I'd asked for pretty easily. So, for example, I asked for them to give me two skills that I had learned. Most of them immediately went from the home page right to skills and education. They looked at this, they kind of like went like this, and then would click on these and eventually, you know, wrote those down in the survey box. So they got those pretty easily. Same thing with the work samples. The only thing some people did hesitate a little bit, we're freezing here, with the like difference between, I guess, word choice and samples and projects. I think the question I used the word projects, and here I used samples, so there was like a little bit of hesitation, but this was always the first place they went, except for like one user who accidentally went to work experience instead, but they soon figured out that that was wrong. But they mostly just clicked through, the majority of them selected just the first two um, things here, so that was fine. I know one thing that, like, obviously it's still not completely done, and so when they would flip through, for example, like this says the same thing right here as like this one, so they would kind of look at that funny and then realize that it was just still a prototype, not completely done. So that was one thing. But um, so yeah, the design is very simple. This navigation follows the same thing as these ones on the tabs. So maybe the only difference is like the size in this tab and the size in these tabs are a little bit different. Pausing again. But even in the references section, they're all the same type of navigation. So I think that does contribute to like how easy it was for people to navigate through the website. Another one of the strengths that people said in their surveys was the contact form, just because they could tell it was easy to use and it looked professional to them. They did want more pictures, which obviously will come eventually. Another thing people said was that it was well organized. I think that goes back to the navigation as well, just because it's very easy for them to understand and easy for them to navigate. So I think that makes them think that it's well organized, and I think the like number of tabs up here makes it pretty well organized as well. Now we're going to move on to weaknesses. So one weakness was on the home page because of how big this little thing is. Like they have to scroll to see all the information and also scroll to see that there's like multiple tabs here. So that is something that needs to be fixed, because especially on the homepage, you don't want people scrolling, especially when they might not even realize to scroll when there is more information there that they're just not seeing. Another thing that a lot of people said was that the font color right here was too light for the content pages. I think that might also have to do with the font choice. I liked it because it was a little bit more creative, but I think we need to focus more on like the legibility and readability of it. So I think that is going to be something that we're going to need to change just based on the reviews, I guess, and probably just go ahead and make it black rather than going with the gray color that it is right now. And then maybe if we did the header right here and like a color that was pulled from this, kind of like we do in the skills and education thing, where the red goes with that, this purple color goes with that, so kind of like make that more unified throughout the site design wise. Another problem that not necessarily the users talked about, but that I felt, was like just the lack of complexity in the design. It was really easy for them to like navigate and get through the whole thing, but I almost felt like it was too easy, so I thought a way, I guess. This is also, I think, a threat to the site, because when it's too simple, it almost insults like the users' intelligence, kind of. And so I thought maybe like a combination of some of the similar things. So work samples and work experience, maybe we could combine these into like a drop down menu type of thing, just because number one, obviously we had somebody click on work experience when they should have been clicking on work samples. So maybe if we just had like a see my work type of tab right there, and then you drop down and it would say sample projects and work experiences, then people would definitely know which one they're looking for. And that would kind of just add another layer to it with the drop down menu. I know with drop down menus we do have to think about other things like hover capabilities, and that gets annoying, especially for different types of users. So that would be something that I would have to think about. Another thing that was only like briefly mentioned during the usability analysis was like there's no breadcrumbs. So like you go here and you don't know which ones you've already clicked on, and same with up here. Like you don't know, have I already been here? Have I already looked at Photoshop? Have I already looked at InDesign? Those types of things. I think that's definitely more important in a more complex site, like to know where you've been, and I think that that would be really helpful if we do combine the work samples and work experience sections. But I'm not really sure how to create breadcrumbs in this case. I only basically know like hover click type of deal, you know, like when you're hovering over it and you click it, like that'll change it, but I'm not sure how to do a real breadcrumb situation where once the button has been pressed, it changes permanently. So that is something to think about, and it's not really something that I think I'll be like fixing for the final project that we're turning in, but I did think it was interesting that that was brought up. As far as threats go, I think one of the biggest threats comes here. I've tried to look up this on like the different forums on Adobe and just Googling it. Have still not really figured it out. I've heard, by heard I mean I read, some things about like going through FTP in order to do it. Obviously my site isn't live, so I don't really have an FTP thing set up for it, but that would be like a huge threat if it was live, because people, this is obviously like the type of site that potential employers would be looking at, and they would definitely want to be able to download my resume. And the fact that there's a whole section for it and there's no anything there is just confusing. So that's one thing. And then another thing about this particular page is I'm not sure once I do figure it out how I'm going to like actually design it. Like maybe I could make like or take a screenshot of my resume and make that like the picture, and then you would click on that and that's what would download it. So I don't know if those are things that are out of my like design capabilities, especially on this program, but it definitely is something to be thinking about. But okay, I already kind of addressed the other threat that I had, which was adding more complexity to the site. I just think that it is too simple right now. And maybe the complexity could come from some design work. Maybe if we made the background a specific design. I just didn't want to take too much away from like the actual text and what we were looking at by having like a colored background. I mean, not, I guess a color wouldn't, but like a background that was too busy. I originally had a different color, but then it didn't go with like the red and the logo, and so I decided to just try to implement the colors through like these pages where we had different things. So hopefully that's good. But that was something people did write down in the like suggestions thing, was more color and more photos. So that is something I will be working on adding in for the final project. And that's also something that I wrote down for opportunities, was just adding pictures and more design features to hold interest. I think these help, having these in here. Obviously they need like the words to go along with them, but I do think that being able to see the things that I've worked on or what have you, that would be good. I was also thinking like this and this are Swifts. I think it might be cool, like export to a Swift. It might be cool if you could possibly, once I figure out how to click on things, you could click on it and that would take you to it and you would actually be able to experience the work, which might be, obviously it would be more interactive and more helpful. I think the added complexity would let me do a little bit more with the design. I feel like right now I'm kind of trapped by like the very simple two layers of navigation, I guess, and something like that Another thing I thought of was like going really minimalistic and only having a couple of like button navigations up here, and maybe doing like, on real websites kind of, they do contact and references at the bottom. That might be something to think about for this, just to kind of like, we could do something different up here design wise, I guess is what I'm saying. But yeah, I think that if we add more complexity, it would be a little bit more sophisticated of a design. I also wanted to work to incorporate the logo more, just because I think it would help remind the user of where they are. Might be something I might do on the contact page, because I'm not really sure what kind of images I want to put here, but I do want to put some images. And I don't really want to like plaster my face all over it. But I think that might be something interesting. And even when it comes to work samples, if I could do almost like a screencast walking someone through like the work I did on this. I designed the whole newspaper, so maybe if I did a screencast just flipping through and the person could click on that, that would be like really helpful in terms of selling myself, I guess, to a potential employer, which I know we haven't really talked about the purpose of this website, but I feel like that is part of the purpose. So yeah, that was my strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Obviously, it needs a lot of work, but I am happy that people were able to navigate it pretty easily. So that was one plus to it. What else do I need to talk about here? Yeah, so the usability test was definitely interesting because I had two different groups, one sort of younger and one older, and none of them had any experience with like web design. So I think that their results were, even though it was a small sampling, pretty accurate. And so I was happy with the results, but I do think that there's a lot more work, and I think a lot of it comes from the design. But thank you.